Good morning, everyone. I feel as if I'm almost talking to myself right now. I'm sorry, I'm chewing a little something. I'll be done in a few minutes. Right. Today is November the 5th. It is Saturday morning and it is story time, everyone. So, before we properly begin, well, we are beginning. Before I say anything else to you, first of all, I'd like to say good morning to my spirit guide. Excuse me, I'm sucking away. I'd like to say good morning to my spirit guide, Gregor, who is standing to my right side as always. I'd like to say good morning to Chris. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Rosemary. I hear you have balmy breezes in Florida today.
Oh, God, it's beautiful. It's so beautiful today. I can see somebody outside has got a flag blowing in the breeze, and you can see the trees blowing, the palm leaves are blowing away beautifully. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous sunny day. And once we've done the show, I'm going to open the windows at the front of the house. I can't open them at the back of the house because the pool cage is crashed. But at the front of the house, we can have breezes coming in. It'll be so nice and so beautiful. So it's a perfect, perfect day. Well, now, where are you, Chris?
I'm in Vermont. My father-in-law's 85th birthday party is today.
Nice. So, are you all dressed up, raring to go?
Definitely dressed up. We'll be raring to go after the show.
Okay. Mike tells me you need earrings.
They're all sitting at your house.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
when I left Florida, I was leaving for 4 days, and then the hurricane hit, so I didn't get to go back.
that's your
Everything I
excuse.
packed was for 4 days, and I've been existing
That's
for a
your,
month.
that's your excuse.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, all right. Well, anyway, so I'm nearly finished. This is people think it's a sweetie that I'm eating, and it isn't actually. So I have to have these things. I can't exactly say it's medicine, but it's a kind of medicine. But I can't chew it. They are not chewables; they're suckables. So I'm just waiting for the last little dregs to come off my tongue. So while I'm waiting for that, why don't I ask you, Chris? Is there anybody there?
Yeah, we have people who are still continuing to log on. Leslie's saying good morning. Loretta, VM. No one else is in the chat room quite yet,
Okay.
but I
Well,
see our numbers. We have a lot of people watching. They're just not in the chat room.
oh, okay. All right. Well, right. I'm done with my chewy bits. Let's see. Today is story time. I'm going to wait for a few minutes, as I always do, to let everyone log on because, you know, because if you come into the story in the middle of it, you wonder what on earth it is that I'm talking about. However, you can always go back and watch this. Did you all know that? You can go back into YouTube afterwards and you can click on it and you'll see it from the beginning to the end. Or you can fast forward and find the bit in the middle that you really like the best. So, isn't it great? Isn't technology great? I can remember, gosh, how many years ago now? My daughter was in New York and I was, where was I? I must have been in Vermont at the time. I was anyway. It doesn't matter where I was, does it? And she'd bought two or three dresses. She was going to an event, and she wasn't sure which dress she should keep and which she should send back, and what did it look good, and so on and so forth. And I remember her actually saying to me, "Can I show you these dresses?" And it was the first ever time that we went on camera and it was amazing. So, I mean, I don't know if any of the rest of you can remember this. Some of you, of course, are far too young to remember this sort of thing. But I remember, seeing her on camera, and she would go off screen, and then she'd come back on with a dress, parade it in front of me, and what do you think? And then she'd go try on another one, and it was fantastic. It was a fantastic thing. And now, look at us now. We're so used to it. We can't remember a time before we had a camera. I remember also, going back a little further, when people were talking about one day we'll be able to see each other on camera, and one day you'll be able to call someone on the telephone and you'll be able to see them and see their face. And I can remember being absolutely horrified that anybody might catch me without my makeup on, or without, or just waking up, my hair all over the place. And now we don't care, do we? Now, my daughter calls me first thing in the morning, and if I'm still in bed, I usually am in bed. If I'm in bed by the time she's up, it's because I'm reading. We don't care. What does your hair look like? It doesn't matter. We're so used to it now. Technology is an amazing thing, and we've made great strides in technology. Although it's an amazing thing, on the one hand, it is, if we misuse it can really sort of hinder the way that we connect with our own self, the way that we connect with the spirit world, the way we are able to listen, the way that we're able to hear things going on. It's quite amazing, really. We love technology, and here we are using this technology, but be very careful, people, not to, use it too much, that you are only focused on what you're hearing and seeing on your phone or your computer or what have you, and you're forgetting to hear and see the bigger picture, the wider picture. You're not able to see anymore, or hear anymore, or sense anymore anything else that is going on. I think if we use our technology too much, it dulls our senses. That's what I'm trying to say. So, Chris, um, before I begin my story, how's it looking there? More people logging on? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Cheryl, Judith, Gary, Lorraine, Annika, they're all saying their good mornings, talking about the weather where they're at. Amy, 70s in the Adirondacks with Gary. Lorraine's got 70s in North Carolina.
I
Um,
want to know if Gary is camping. Does he have his teepee up? How often does he use his teepee?
I had forgotten about the TP.
If
Wow.
it's our Gary, my Gary,
Yes, yes.
so I want to know about the teepee. Are you in the teepee right now? He had this beautiful teepee made, and I've never actually seen it. I think I've seen photos, but I've never actually seen it. So, are you camping out, Gary? Are you in the teepee? And if so, if it's, I can't imagine at this time of year that it's 70, because that's high for where you are, right, at this time of year. So it seems. And Chris, didn't you tell me in Vermont it's 65 or something today?
68 right now. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're lucky.
I
Indian
know.
summer, right?
Yeah, very much an Indian summer, very much so. So yeah, that's amazing, because we are partway into November now, and usually the winds are blowing and winter's come upon us, and all that stuff. All right, so uh, does anybody have a question, or let's not go with questions. Let's find some of the comments that we've got before I'll just give it a few more minutes before I start my once upon a time. Yes, Chris. So what have we got? Any comments there?
Well, Victor's on. He's saying hello from Brazil.
Hi,
Gary
Alicia.
Gary said he took his TP down. It was up for 2 months. Annika says she refers to herself as the in-between generation, as when she was little, everything was still simple, black and white TV, just one
Oh,
phone, a record player, and nowadays we have phones and PCs, et cetera, et cetera.
yes. Well, I remember black and white TV also, but I do remember the first TV that we ever had. Now, in England, we were behind America, we were behind the States. I think in the States you had TVs in the maybe the late 40s or early 50s or something. And we were later getting one. My neighbor had a teeny TV, little tiny box thing, so teeny tiny, and it sat on top of a bureau of hers. And every now and again, she would lift us over the fence to take a look and to watch her TV, and we were enthralled by it. Yes, I am that old. And but then when I was, I think I was about 11 years old when my mother, we finally got a TV, which was in a cabinet, very posh. It was in a walnut cabinet with two doors that opened out to reveal the television set. Yes, we were very posh in our house, very posh in our house. We had fitted carpets when all the neighbours had linoleum. We had brocade curtains when a lot of people didn't have curtains at all. Yes, we were very posh in our house. Anyway, all right. So, all right, Chris. So let's begin, shall we?
Yes.
So, once upon a time. Now, I'm going back now 25 years. It is not really my story, although I am included in the story. So, 25 years ago, now, last year we celebrated the 25th anniversary of The Eagle and the Rose, which is still going strong, and people are still reading it, and still people are still being moved by it. And it's, I feel very humbled by that fact that even 25 years after the book was published, it is still going strong, amazingly still going strong. So I was touring all over. I went into all over America and also into Canada, and it was a very grueling time. But nevertheless, um, we had crowds of people wherever we went. I'm pleased to say we did lots of book signings, but unlike most authors who did book signings, um, usually an author, you go into the store, there's a long line, they sign your book, they might speak to you for a few minutes about the book, they might even read a chapter from the book, and then you get down to the book signing. Let me tell you, it was not like that. Did I say once upon a time? I can't remember. Have I said that already? Let's do it again. So, once upon a time, 25 years or so ago. There you are. Now, go back into the story. Right. So, okay. So, everywhere we went, there were crowds of people. And when we went to a book signing, it became very quickly obvious to everyone involved that chairs were placed in the bookstores, and it was, I was going to be there for at least an hour before we signed the books, because obviously when people know you and they know who you are, and especially when they've read the book, um, or they're about to read the book, um, they know that you talk to dead people who we know are not really dead at all, don't we? But still, so people would crowd into the bookstores, not really to necessarily for me to sign the book, but to hope that they might get a message. So every bookstore that I ever went into, we began by my explaining a little bit about why I wrote the book and so on, and then we would go into messages. I mean, I couldn't help it. It wasn't something that I had any control over, you understand. It would be and this is how I began, and this is my story, and here is the Eagle and the Rose, and just coming to the lady over there, and I see a man standing next to you, died of cancer, and oh, wait a minute, and standing over there, and of course, the word went out. The booksellers were thrilled because, although it was a lot of hard work for them, and I'm grateful to all of those booksellers all of those years ago, it became very common knowledge very quickly that I was giving messages, which I did. So everywhere we went. And then I started my world travels, and it was the same thing. So I went to Australia, to New Zealand, I went to Italy, I went to Germany, I went to France, I went to you name it. I mean, on and on. And oh, and I went to South Africa, and we'll keep going on. We won't have time for the story, but so um, okay, so every time you give a message, and especially in that kind of an environment, the messages aren't necessarily long messages. They can be sometimes longer, but mostly brief because you're aware that lots of people are there and lots of people are looking for messages of one sort or another. And you only have a very limited amount of time before you are obliged to then sign books. So, because the I gave messages in that way to, in fact, probably over the years, thousands and thousands of people. Um, you, you don't realize, or should I say, I had no real clue. I had no real idea of the effect that I had on people, and not only the people who received the messages, but people who were listening and people who were listening to other people get messages. And so you do your thing, and you're busy, 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 and you're traveling from one place to another, and you're giving out all of this information and these glorious messages, just just are there for everyone to enjoy and appreciate. But as I am the one dealing with it all and going from person to person, to place, to this town, to this city, to that country, to this country, I had no real idea of how uh, people were affected. And over the years, I've had people who say, "Oh, well, I saw you in so and so years ago, or you gave me a message such and such, and it changed my life." And you sort of you start to I shouldn't say you I started to gather the idea that these messages were in fact having a profound and indeed wonderful um, effect on people, but still, because I'm the one giving the messages, um, I am, I can't put myself in the shoes of the people who are receiving the messages and who are being changed by them. However, a few weeks ago, I was um, giving a consultation to a lady who, beautiful woman, and uh, as she came on camera, all this wonderful technology, I looked at her and I said, "I don't have I spoken to you before? I don't think so. Have I? Is this your first time?" And she said, "Oh no, Rosemary, no, 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 no. I can go back 25 years." And she described being at one of my events 25 years ago. And she said to me, my sister saw you on Oprah and told me you really got to check this woman out. You've really got to to see what she's about. So she bought the book and she came to one of my events. Did not um, get a message then, but still remembers that event. And then she went on to say to me, and then 14 years ago, uh, you spoke to me at an event, and she was in Canada. And I remember the event. There were hundreds, if not I think a couple of thousand people at that particular event. And she said, "Oh, you won't remember me, um, but I remember you." And she said, "I brought my book to you to sign." She was with her mother and I do believe her sister at the time. And she said, I brought my book for you to sign." And she said, you asked us all, and how are you, and did you have a good time?" And she said, I said yes to you. I was yes, I'm fine. But she said, then you stopped writing, uh, you stopped signing books for a moment, and she said, and you looked at me, and you looked right through me, And she said, I was absolutely certain you were about to give me a message, but then something happened with your microphone and you got distracted. But she said, you looked at me and I just knew that you saw right into me. She said, I just knew that you saw right into me. And she said, at that time, I was a heroin addict. And you looked at me as if you absolutely knew everything about me. And from that moment on, I worked to get clean. I got clean and have since married, had children, and here I am. Um, you know, it sort of astounded me, really. She began the whole conversation by saying to me, you saved my life. Your book saved my life. You, as I've said, as I said earlier on, you don't, or I don't, when I'm going around and I'm giving messages, I hear people gasp at certain information. How does she know that? How could she possibly tell me that? You can see people's faces. You see the emotion, the tears, and the laughter. I try to bring both into when I'm giving messages. We laugh and we cry, often together, um, and so I can see it, or in a, let's say, in a sort of a superficial way, because I don't know what happens when they leave me. I don't know what happens after a consultation. I don't know if they're affected or if they're not affected. I'm hoping that they are getting something from it, and I'm hoping always that the messages are profound and for them and will make a difference in their lives, because those in the spirit world, when they come to talk to us, they are hoping that they can guide us and steer us, and help to make our lives better, help to reassure us, help us to understand that we actually don't die, help us to understand that they're still very much in our lives. Um, so I hope all of those things, but really, unless someone comes back to me and says something like this lady did to me a while ago, I don't really fully get the full impact. But when perhaps you're not feeling so great, perhaps you're wondering, as I was that particular morning, frustrated because, uh, you know, um, sometimes you feel you're not doing enough for someone. Sometimes you feel that you don't want to do it anymore because sometimes the messages are not always that great, or can be, let's say, sometimes hurtful. If somebody needs a kick up the bum, for instance, that's my job to give them the kick up the bum. And so sometimes my messages from the spirit world can be a little harsh or a little upsetting, and I hate that. I hate that when that happens, but at the same time, I know that if that's the way it goes, it's because it's needed. So I was feeling a little despondent from a morning session that I had with someone, um, and then here's this woman saying to me, "You saved, you saved my life. You turned my life around. Your book saved my life." And to know that someone was in such profound and deep misery with their lives, and you're able to do something, say something, or even if it's just to reach out a hand, and you can make such a huge difference to somebody's life. You can literally help them to turn their lives around just by um, being able to do what I do. Um, it's People think, when you come to see a medium, they think, oh, she's going to give messages of love and hope and all the rest of it. Yeah, and we do. Of course, we do. But I think when people come to see me, can only speak for me and not for other mediums around. But when people come to see me, the messages usually are so clear, so can't argue with them. You know, you can't. I think I said on last Thursday, if you get a message from Grey Eagle, you pay attention, because you can take what he says to the bank. What he says is absolute and it's true, and it's the messages are meant to help and to guide and to steer you, or to give you hope or to give you courage or whatever it is. I've been doing this for so long that it's so easy to take what I do for granted, uh, which I try not to do. Um, but I think when people come to see a medium, they don't necessarily expect what they get. And what they get is so much more, generally speaking, so much more than they could ever imagine that they were ever going to get. And in such detail that they can't argue with what is being said. And when I looked at this lovely lady who said to me 25 years ago is the first time I went to see you, and then 14 years ago was when you helped me in such a profound way, it made me stop and think, you know, wow, how very lucky I am to be able to do what I do. And how very fortunate people are who come to see me. They give their loved ones in the spirit world an opportunity to come through to talk to them, um, which they do. They give their loved ones in the spirit world an opportunity to tell them things and to encourage them and to inspire them and to ease their minds and to bring them comfort. What a story, right? What a story of someone's life. The story of this lovely lady who came to me. What a story she has. You know, I saw Rosemary Altea and it changed my life, saved my life. What a story she has. We all have a story, right? But what a story I have. Wow. Who would guess when I was born that I would have such a story to tell? Every person's story is an important one. Every person's story is their story for them to savour, to enjoy, or to despair of, whichever way their story goes. But we all have a story, and every story is worth listening to. If you have a story, I'd love to hear your story. You can always email us, rosemary@rosemaryaltea.com or something like that. Or, actually that's the website. Or you can email us, Chris, yes, at rosemary@rosemaryaltea.com. Yes, that sounds better, right? We'd love to hear your stories, and maybe if you get into the chat room, you can give us a little glimpse of your story. How profound, how fantastic, how amazing. And I'm going to add a little add-on to this story, because on Monday night we did our Halloween night. Lots of people sent in their spooky stories or their ghosty stories, and we had fun. I had fun reading those out for people, and I did tell a little story or two my own self. But for those of you who are not able to watch, you can go to YouTube to see it, by the way. But for those of you who are not able to be there or were not able to join us, um, even before we began the show, my friend Mary Lou was here, and people from the spirit world started popping in. And my father was there. My grandfather, who I've never met before, was there. That was very interesting. My brother was there. My auntie Loseby was there. Who, wow! I mean, imagine that. Um, uh, and then Mary Lou's parents came to visit us, and of course, it goes without saying, Mike was there playing spooky tricks on us, rattling skeleton bones, and we had a few big hairy spiders coming. They're not real; they weren't real. Don't worry about it. Just people in the spirit world playing tricks, and after all, it was a trick or treat night, wasn't it? and we had tricks and we had treats. And there was a young man also who came through, standing by Mary Lou's side, and asked if Mary Lou would give a message to his wife and to his family. What you don't know, what you didn't see there, was that despite her nervousness, Mary Lou did give the message to this lovely lady from this young man who had died so tragically. And again, you don't see. Here's the thing: I don't know that if I'm making myself clear. Oh yes, I say there's a young man, and blah blah blah. It's not that I'm blasé about it. I'm so used to it that it's just normal for me. It's an everyday occurrence for me. But the profound effect, the ripples go out and go out and go out. It's like throwing a stone into a pond. If you throw a stone into a pond, you see the ripples and they go out onto the surface, don't they? They ripple and they have an effect on the surface. What we don't see is as the stone sinks down and down and down, deep, 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 deep down, the ripples underneath the water, the ripples and the ripples, they have a more profound effect and a deeper effect than we could ever imagine. And so here we are having a fabulous and a fun time on Halloween, but creating a profound and a deep effect for a family who are grieving the loss of this young man who came to give a message to his wife. All right, I think, what I don't know what I'm trying to say here. Who knows what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to say lots of different things. But when I sit in front of someone and they say to me, "You made a difference," when I listen to someone who tells me, "You changed my life for the better," when I hear someone say, "Let me tell you a story. You said this and this. I went home and told so and their life has just lifted. You brought sunshine where there was no sunshine." When you hear people say that, and you know you've been a small part of it, wow, what a great story my life has been. The end. All right, Chris,
It's
how
funny
are we
when I
doing in the chat room?
when I
Sorry,
hear you say the end, I know it's not the end because you continue.
I know. Well, the Native Americans, when you say that, the Native Americans, when they tell stories around the campfire, uh, there is no beginning because the beginning was a century ago, maybe the grandfathers and the great grandfathers who told the same story, and the stories evolve. So there is no beginning to a story, and certainly there is no end to a story. So no, there is never really an end to these stories. Anyway, let's go to the chat room and see how we're doing.
All right. Annika says, "Wow, what a story."
Yes,
Uh, Judith says, "You never know what a profound effect you and your information may have on people. You are such a blessing. I woke myself up with a small laugh and feeling great. I feel like I had been with my sister, who is on the other side. I
nice, nice,
feel like
nice.
we had a nice visit. I felt better about my cardiac surgery that's upcoming."
Great. Well, you know we're going to be with you, don't you, darling? When you go through that surgery, we're going to be hovering around you. We're going to be making sure that everything goes well. And I think, let me be clear, I'm not just talking about my story. I'm talking about everyone has a story, and everyone's story is a special story for them. Okay, keep going, Chris.
Flory says, "Indeed, Rosemary, you give us hope without perhaps realizing it. Some time ago, I mentioned about losing my first grandson when Seth was only 11 days old. You mentioned that if I were to see you, you would not see him as an infant, but as a young man. Well, Rosemary, with those few words, You gave me such a feeling of hope, love, and that this beloved grandson of mine is actually growing and maturing and possibly is with our family and his part of our ongoing family. Thank
Yes,
you.
not possibly, definitely. So thank you for sharing that with me, with us.
Loretta says, Rosemary, I am absolutely one of your people who has been greatly helped by the messages I received from you in Gray Eagle. I saw you in New York City several months after 9/11 in a hotel ballroom. My husband brought me to the event as a surprise after I read your book.
Oh, nice.
Uh,
I
Let's
remember that. Yes, I do remember that. It was a really difficult time, I think, for so many people. And because, obviously 9/11 shook us all, really, rocked our world. Um, the, the sadness of it. And yet, through it all, um, and you're reminding me now, it was amazing for me because even though there was so much despair, so much heartache, Grey Eagle and I, we were able to bring such joy and such hope and such light to so many people whose lives had been destroyed. We were able to literally lift them and give them hope. I remember very clearly at one event. No, I'll tell that another. No, no, I won't. I'll tell it. Okay, I won't. I was thinking, oh, I could save this for another story time. But so I'll tell you briefly. There was a lovely young woman who was due to get married. I think a week or two after 9/11. She got her wedding dress. It was hanging in her bedroom, and she came to an event where there were a whole group of people who had experienced loss through 9/11, and each of them received messages. And I remember this one lovely young woman. um, she had waited a long time. She was not, she was not in her early 20s or anything like that. She waited a long time to find the man of her dreams, and he had waited a long time to find the woman of his dreams. And at the 11th hour, he was snatched away from her. And I can remember him coming through from the spirit world and talking to her, explaining where her wedding dress was, explaining what her bedroom looked like, explaining that he had seen the wedding dress hanging there and she just couldn't bear to get rid of it. And I remembered the profound effect that had on her because she was without him, that she'd lost him. And he came to say, "No, never. You've never lost me." I've I do often wonder with the people I give messages to, especially those kinds of messages, what happened in their lives, how they're getting on now. And if any of you out there has received a message and it has changed your life, or it has, or it altered your life in any way, or your life is improved after devastation, we'd love to hear those stories from you. Okay, keep going, Chris.
Lorraine says, we are lucky to have found you and Gray Eagle. It gives more meaning to our lives. Everyone wonders how our loved ones are in the spirit world. Our questions answered. There is no better feeling of peace, and we can now nor fear our passing. This is such a special gift you have, and to be able to share it has uplifted my life for sure. Christ's love coming through his angels, you and Gray Eagle.
Well, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Loretta, for that. Keep going, Chris.
Rhonda says during the dark days in the beginning of COVID, my dad was going through chemo and eventually passed. Those were dark days for me. I work in a medical clinic, which made this time even harder on me. My dad passed, and I was at a low point. I found your book, The Eagle and the Rose, in an antique store. I had no idea who you were, but the book caught my attention and I bought it. From there, I read all of your books. I watched all your videos. I listened to all of your CDs and now participate in the live videos. You brought me into the light again, and I am forever grateful. I love you, Rosemary.
Oh, Rhonda, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this. I did not mean for this to be a How Wonderful Rosemary Fest. I did not. That's not what this is about. But it is wonderful to hear people's stories and to see what a profound effect so often our messages do bring to people. People often say to me, "Why do you refer to yourself as we?" This, in England, we would think that I was. We call it the royal we. When Queen Victoria used to say, "We are not pleased," or "We are unhappy," or whatever it was that she would say, it got to be known as the royal we. When I refer to the we, it is not the royal we, it is Regal and I. just to be clear. Okay, keep going, Chris.
Leslie says, I always love your stories.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I love them too. What I love about my stories, more than anything else. Now, look, I'm a storyteller, so when my daughter was a little girl, I would make up the most fantastic and amazing stories for her. We had elves and fairies, and we had, all sorts of magical things that I would talk about, and I would make up these great stories. We'd have a bedtime story every night, and we'd either continue with the story that I'd started maybe a few days ago, or we would start on a new story. And when my daughter was a little girl, she'd come into bed with me in the mornings and she'd say, "Mummy, tell me a story." And my stories would often begin, once upon a time, there was a little girl with blonde hair and green eyes, which is my daughter, right? So with blonde hair and green eyes, and she'd giggle to herself, and then I'd start and tell a story about this little girl who maybe met a puppy, or who maybe met a little fairy in the woods, or whatever the story was going to be about. And she loved it. And then, joy, oh joy, 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 then I was able to tell stories to my grandson. And again, lots of stories. And always, once upon a time, there was a little boy with blonde hair and green eyes. And there he was. All right. And he would giggle and smile. And I still do that with him. And, we still do that from time to time. Of course, he's 9 years old now, so he doesn't, it's sort of getting over that somewhat, but still loves it. What I love about the stories that we tell here are that they are, in fact, magical, wonderful. They make us smile, they inspire us, they give us hope and joy, uh, but they're true. They're all true stories. I don't need to have to make anything up here. Isn't that amazing? That life is more amazing than any magical imagination can conjure. Chris.
Cheryl says, I never think I have any lasting impressions on people, but when I was recovering from burns, my physical therapist said I touched her heart for some reason. So you never know.
Well, that was my next sort of little thing that I was going to add, because I don't think it's just someone like myself who has a profound effect on people. I think we can all have a profound effect on others that we meet. And, if we are kind, if we are gentle, if we are generous with our time, and especially if we're generous with our smiles, we all of us can make such a huge difference in someone's life. Imagine you're in the supermarket. You don't know what other people's lives are like, but you smile at that one person who perhaps hasn't had anyone smile at them for ages. They don't have anyone in their lives, or they live on their own and they don't talk to people too much, or because they're too shy, or they don't know what to say. And there you're being kind to them, and you sort of you say something nice, even if it's, "I really like your sweater," or I love that color on you," or whatever it is. You can say those things to a stranger, and bring a smile to anyone's face. We never ever know what effect that we have. And that is also, remember, we can have an adverse effect on people without meaning to. We can have an adverse effect on people. So, you know, we have to always be aware that every one of us can make a difference. Uh, we can make a difference in bringing unhappiness or misery to someone, or just perhaps discontent, or by just looking meanly at someone, not even realizing sometimes that that's what we're doing, or or we can make a difference in a positive way. So let's all try to make a huge, huge difference in a positive way. Chris,
Mary the Londoner is saying,
hello, Mary.
Hi, lovely Rosemary.
Hi, darling.
Pl- please pray for my brother Robert, who has cancer. I am so sad, Rosemary. I love my brother so much, and I always follow you. So, love from Mary the Londoner.
Mary, Mary, the Londoner, my darling Mary. We are. I think you're. I think you told us about your brother before, and I think he is on our healing list. But we shall be sending him healing on a regular basis. I know that you must be very, very sad when we see people we love, and they get sick, and you know absolutely that it's an awful time for them and an awful time for you. It's so easy to lose hope, but it is part of life's journey, and I'm sure that your brother feels so much stronger and so much better simply for having you in his life. Your love goes a long way to giving healing, maybe not in a physical sense, but certainly in a spiritual sense. Chris,
Judith is teasing you by saying, since you and Gray Eagle are going to be with me during the surgery as before, I expect to see feathers and rose petals.
do you now? Well, look, I teach my students, right, not to not to expect. Um, when we expect, we are always disappointed. We because rarely do our rarely are our expectations met, or if they are, not always. Rather be hopeful than expectant. I encourage my students. It's a lesson I teach them always. I don't know, Chris, if you remember this lesson, but I teach it often to my students. If you expect people to behave the way you think, if you expect feathers and roses, you might get them. I'm not saying you're not going to, but if you expect and your expectations are high, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. That's not just with you, my darling, with your roses and your feathers, but it's for all of us. If we expect, so often we will be let down, we will be disappointed, we will be frustrated, and very often angry because our expectations are not met. Rather, be hopeful, be joyful, because if we're hopeful and we're disappointed, well, that's okay because we can continue to be hopeful. But if we expect and we don't get what we expect, well, then it can destroy all hope and all joy. So don't, don't expect too much from us. We should do our best, of course. Chris,
Loretta says, at the New York City event, you walked right down to me and asked who Thomas was.
oh,
Then you said Tommy. He was my best friend who was murdered when we were 12.
how about that? Did it shake you up, my darling? Was that one of those moments? Wasn't that? And weren't you thrilled to bits? Because you were not expecting, there's that word again, you were not expecting anything like it, I'm pretty sure. I'd love to know, what did you feel? What were your first thoughts or your emotions? I know you will remember. I don't know how long ago it was, but I know you will remember because the first time someone like me gives such a profound message, It is unforgettable. Chris,
Lisa says, my mother in law, Peggy, left her body over this same weekend last year. I found her body on the 8th. She chose to leave this life alone. I miss her every day, but I know she is near. I spoke to a comforting Peggy butterfly all summer while
oh
I
my,
floated in the pool. She is
I love
funny.
it.
There's more. She is funny, knowing it irritated me on our trip a month before her passing. After passing, she fizzled a soda bottle at one point while I was driving again. Then yesterday, she fizzled a Coke glass turned upside down on the counter after washing dishes. It took me 2 hours to figure out the irritating noise. Then I found it. Laughing, I just had to smile and tell Peggy hello. I told her we all miss her and thanks. She lets me know she is still Peggy.
How lovely. I love that story. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that with us. I love that. Keep going, Chris.
Lorraine's wondering, do you converse with Jesus?
I do. Simple and easy. Uh, when I was 2 or 3 years old, very, very small, um, my mother would send my sisters and I to the local church. It wasn't the closest one, but she didn't like the one that was actually in the same street that we lived in. Um, she sent us to the one that was all the way up the top of the road on the main road, heavy traffic, so on and so forth. But it was called it was a Baptist church. Now, before you get any ideas, Baptist churches in England are not the same as Baptist churches in America. In the Baptist churches in America, you all have so much fun. You sing, you dance, you do all that stuff. No, this is we're in England now. We're in Britain. We're much more subdued. But it was a Baptist church, and we believed in baptisms. And there was a an underground. Uh, would it be a font? I guess it would be a font for baptisms. And so I became, first of all, from being a little girl, my sisters would drag me there. And then when my younger sister was old enough, we'd all go there on a Sunday afternoon, because Sunday afternoon, in those days, you didn't have the TV going all day long. You It only went for so many hours in a day, and on Sunday afternoon was the Sunday afternoon movie, and I suppose it was the only time my mother could have a respite and watch the movie while we were at church, and far enough away that by the time we walked home, the movie was probably ended. So we were sent to the Baptist church. That Baptist church became my family. The people who ran that church were amazing. Joan and Betty um, Burkett were there. I don't know if anybody in England is watching. Do you remember Joan and Betty Burkett? Weren't they fantastic? Weren't they wonderful, wonderful people? The I guess you call them the elders of the church. The people around the church were unbelievably amazing, and it became my home. Absolutely, I was preaching in the pulpit when I was 14 years old, and I was going from our church to other churches who were affiliated with us, being asked to go and stand in their churches and preach. Now, I was very shy, very very shy kid, and you know, very let's say reluctant to speak out. But when it came to God, when it came to Christ, I could do that because I was inspired by them. So Christ is my Savior. Whenever I give healing, I will often feel His hands on my hands as I'm giving healing to people. Whenever we think about God and that God force, that universal God force that is out there, Christ comes to mind with me. I from the time I can remember. I would talk to him. I would tell him my problems. I'd tell him my woes. I would tell him if I was excited about something. I would talk to him all the time. I would, take long walks, often around the cemetery because it was a great place, and talk to Christ. So yes, and when I was 15 years old, um, I think the elders of the church were despairing of me at that point because every time they asked me, did I want to be baptized, I'd say, no, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. But when I was 15 years old, which was old for people in our church to be baptized, I was actually finally baptized. One of the most miraculous experiences that I can remember. Boy, you didn't expect that. I just said yes, didn't I? But you didn't expect all the rest of it. But there we are. Yes. Chris.
Loretta says, Rosemary, because she's answering your question earlier. Rosemary, I was not expecting anything. I dropped my head and started crying, but you helped me finally put away the guilt of not being with him. Maybe I could have helped. The messages you gave me from him lifted a very long held grief, probably 20 plus years of depression.
Wow.
You have no idea how my life changed for the better, and I truly appreciate and love you for it.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. Wow, that's very much the same situation as the story I told this morning. And again, it's very hard for me to realize and to understand just how much what Gregor and I do can change people's lives. But we're so grateful for the opportunity of being able to do that for you all. Okay, Chris, I know we're coming up to time, but a couple more perhaps.
Okay, I can give you one more. This is from Maggie. Maggie says,
Hi, Maggie. Where have you been?
I was surprised when you told me my cousin Steve was always around me. Pleasantly unexpected. And out of all the cousins, he picked me. So that was her experience with you.
Yes, but listen, Maggie, why wouldn't he pick you? You are lovely. We love you, Maggie. And I'm so glad to hear from you. Where have you been? Been hiding? I hope wherever you've been having a wonderful, wonderful time. That's what I hope. All right, so well, that's it for today then, uh, folks. I feel like what is that? That's all, folks. What was that? The cartoon thing
Looney
going
Tunes.
on. Anyway, um, thank you all for joining us this morning. We do appreciate it. Remember the we is Greg and I. Remember, not the royal we. Anyway, we do appreciate it very, very much so. And we look forward to seeing you on Thursday for our the Spirit World Sees All. We are getting um, together with my two friends Kay and Kay to get a cracking up event going, which I shall be finalising hopefully this weekend, so we can tell you when that is. Um, and when Chris is finished travelling about, um, she may not be. Maybe she'll continue forever and ever, and we shall never actually see her again. Anyway, all right. So we shall be sharing with you what we're going to be doing this November because we're getting ready. It's November and we're getting ready for Christmas and all those exciting things. Oh, wait a minute. Then there's Thanksgiving coming up. I forget because I'm British. We don't celebrate Thanksgiving. But uh, uh, nevertheless, we acknowledge that Thanksgiving is around the corner for all of you, and I'm sure a lot of you are getting ready to decide what you're going to eat and all the rest of it. So we should be doing something for Thanksgiving as well, I'm sure. So anyway, until I see you all again, thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Chris, for doing a great job once again as our facilitator. And last but by no means least, of course, thank you to Gregor. So please, everyone, um, have a very, very, very blessed rest of the day. Have a very blessed weekend, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye bye.